My name is Captain John Smith, and I've been a pilot for over 20 years. On that fateful day, I was in command of a cargo flight from Miami to San Juan, Puerto Rico. It was a route I had flown countless times. But that night, something felt different. The sky was clear, but there was an eerie sensation in the air that I couldn't quite explain. The day started like any other. I arrived at Miami International Airport early in the morning, ready to conduct the usual pre-flight checks. My co-pilot, Mark Johnson, greeted me with a smile as we made our way to the aircraft. "Morning, John. Ready for another routine trip?" Mark asked, his voice full of the usual camaraderie. "Morning, Mark. Let's hope it stays routine," I replied, though I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. We began our pre-flight inspection, meticulously going through every detail of the aircraft. The Boeing 747 was in perfect condition, as expected. The cargo was secured, the fuel tanks were full, and all systems appeared to be functioning normally. Yet, that nagging feeling of unease persisted. As we climbed into the cockpit, I glanced at the weather reports one last time. Clear skies all the way to San Juan. No signs of turbulence or storms. It should have been a smooth flight, but as we taxied to the runway, I couldn't help but notice the unusual stillness in the air. "Everything all right, Captain?" Mark asked, noticing my distracted demeanor. "Yeah, just a bit of a strange feeling today." "Probably nothing," I said, trying to brush it off. We received clearance for takeoff, and soon we were airborne, climbing steadily into the clear blue sky. The initial part of the flight was uneventful. We settled into our routine, monitoring the instruments and chatting about our plans for the weekend. "Got any plans for the weekend, Mark?" I asked, trying to keep the conversation light. "Thinking of taking the family to the beach. The kids have been begging for it," he replied with a chuckle. "Sounds like a good time." "I might do the same," I said, though my mind was still preoccupied. As we approached the boundary of the Bermuda Triangle, I felt a slight chill run down my spine. I had flown through this area many times before without incident. The Bermuda Triangle was more of a myth than a real threat, or so I thought. Entering the Bermuda Triangle, Mark announced, more as a formality than anything else. I nodded, keeping my eyes on the instruments. Everything was still normal. The sky was clear, the ocean below us was calm, and there wasn't a cloud in sight. But that strange feeling in my gut was growing stronger. "Ever had any weird experiences in the Triangle?" Mark asked, breaking the silence. "Not really. Just the usual turbulence now and then." "You?" I replied, trying to sound nonchalant. "Same here. Just stories you hear from other pilots," he said, shrugging. We continued our conversation, but my mind kept wandering back to that uneasy feeling. It was as if the air itself was charged with some unknown energy. I couldn't explain it, but I knew something was different. As we flew deeper into the Triangle, I found myself checking the instruments more frequently. Everything was still normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. It was an irrational thought, but it persisted nonetheless. "John, you seem a bit on edge today. Everything okay?" Mark asked, his concern evident. "Yeah, just can't shake this weird feeling." "Probably just tired," I said, trying to reassure both him and myself. We continued our flight, the miles ticking away beneath us. The sky remained clear, the ocean calm, but that sense of unease never left me. It was like a shadow lurking just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to pounce. As we neared the halfway point of our journey, I decided to check in with air traffic control. It was a routine procedure, but it gave me a sense of comfort to hear another voice. "Miami Center, this is Cargo Flight 742, checking in," I said, my voice steady. "Cargo Flight 742, this is Miami Center. You're on course and clear. How's the ride?" came the reply. "Smooth so far. Clear skies all the way," I responded, trying to sound casual. "Good to hear. Have a safe flight," the controller said. "Thanks, Miami Center. Cargo Flight 742 out," I replied, ending the transmission. The familiar exchange helped calm my nerves, but only slightly. I still couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. I glanced over at Mark, who was busy checking the navigation charts. "Everything looks good, John. We're right on track," he said, looking up with a reassuring smile. Thanks, Mark. Let's keep it that way, I said, returning his smile. We continued our flight, the steady hum of the engines providing a comforting background noise. But as we flew deeper into the Bermuda Triangle, the sense of unease grew stronger. It was as if the very air around us was charged with some unknown force. Mark, keep an eye on the instruments. Let me know if you see anything unusual, I said, my voice betraying my concern. Will do, Captain, he replied, his tone serious. We flew on in silence, both of us focused on our respective tasks. The sky remained clear, the ocean calm, but that strange feeling of unease never left me. It was like a shadow lurking just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to strike. As we neared the halfway point of our journey, I decided to check in with air traffic control again. It was a routine procedure, but it gave me a sense of comfort to hear another voice. Miami Center, this is Cargo Flight 742. Checking in, I said, my voice steady. Cargo Flight 742, this is Miami Center. You're on course and clear. How's the ride? Came the reply. Smooth so far. Clear skies all the way, I responded, trying to sound casual. Good to hear. Have a safe flight, the controller said. Thanks, Miami Center. Cargo Flight 742 out, I replied, ending the transmission. The familiar exchange helped calm my nerves, but only slightly. I still couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. I glanced over at Mark, who was busy checking the navigation charts. Everything looks good, John. We're right on track, he said, looking up with a reassuring smile. Thanks, Mark. Let's keep it that way, I said, returning his smile. We continued our flight, the steady hum of the engines providing a comforting background noise. But as we flew deeper into the Bermuda Triangle, the sense of unease grew stronger. It was as if the very air around us was charged with some unknown force. Mark, keep an eye on the instruments. Let me know if you see anything unusual, I said, my voice betraying my concern. Will do, Captain, he replied, his tone serious. We flew on in silence, both of us focused on our respective tasks. The sky remained clear, the ocean calm, but that strange feeling of unease never left me. It was like a shadow lurking just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to strike. As we entered the Bermuda Triangle, everything seemed normal. The sky was clear, the ocean below us was calm, and the instruments were functioning perfectly. It was just another routine flight, or so it seemed. Mark and I continued to monitor the instruments and chat about our plans, trying to keep the atmosphere light. John, do you ever think about the stories you hear about this place? Mark asked, glancing out the window at the seemingly endless expanse of water. Not really, I replied, though in truth, the stories had been on my mind all morning. Most of them are just myths and legends. We've flown through here countless times without any issues. Yeah, I guess you're right, Mark said, though he didn't sound entirely convinced. We flew on in silence for a while, both of us lost in our own thoughts. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the ocean. It was a beautiful sight, but the sense of unease I had felt earlier was still there, lurking just beneath the surface. Suddenly, the instruments began to act up. The radar screen flickered, the altimeter needle jumped erratically, and the compass spun wildly. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized something was very wrong. Mark, check the instruments. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? I asked, my voice tight with concern. Yeah, John. Everything's going haywire. The radar's going crazy, and the compass is useless, Mark replied, his voice mirroring my anxiety. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. All right, let's switch to visual navigation. Keep an eye on the horizon and look for any landmarks. We'll get through this. Mark nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon. Got it, Captain. I'll keep an eye out. As we continued to fly, the situation only worsened. The instruments were completely unreliable, and we were essentially flying blind. I tried to maintain our course using visual cues, but the ocean below us offered little in the way of landmarks. John, I don't like this. We're in the middle of nowhere, and the instruments are useless. What do we do? Mark asked, his voice edged with panic. Stay calm, Mark. We've trained for situations like this. We'll get through it, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed my own words. Just as I was about to suggest turning back, the sky darkened ominously. Thick, black clouds appeared out of nowhere, swirling and churning like a living thing. Lightning flashed within the clouds, illuminating the sky with an eerie, otherworldly light. Where did that come from? Mark exclaimed, his eyes wide with fear. I don't know, but we need to get out of here. Fast, I replied, my heart pounding in my chest. I pushed the throttle forward, trying to gain altitude and escape the storm. But the clouds seemed to close in around us, engulfing the plane in a maelstrom of darkness and lightning. The turbulence was intense, shaking the aircraft violently. Hang on, Mark. We're going to get through this, I shouted over the roar of the storm. The plane bucked and jolted as we flew through the storm, the lightning flashing all around us. The instruments were completely useless now, and we were flying on instinct alone. I gripped the controls tightly, my knuckles white with the effort. John, look out! Mark shouted, pointing out the window. I glanced to my left and saw a massive bolt of lightning streaking towards us. There was no time to react. The lightning struck the plane with a deafening crack, and the cockpit was filled with a blinding white light. For a moment, I thought we were done for, but then the light faded, and the plane was still in the air. The storm raged on around us, but we were still flying. Are you all right, Mark? I asked, my voice shaking. Yeah, I'm fine. Just a little shaken, he replied, his voice equally unsteady. We continued to fly through the storm, the turbulence making it nearly impossible to maintain control. The lightning flashed all around us, and the thunder was deafening. It felt like we were flying through the heart of a hurricane. John, we need to find a way out of this. We can't keep flying like this, Mark said, his voice filled with desperation. I know. I'm trying, I replied, my mind racing. I scanned the horizon, looking for any sign of a break in the clouds. But the storm was all-encompassing, a swirling vortex of darkness and lightning. It felt like we were trapped in a nightmare with no way out. Mark, keep your eyes peeled. We need to find a way out of this storm, I said, my voice filled with determination. Roger that, Captain. I'm on it, Mark replied, his eyes scanning the horizon. We flew on through the storm, the turbulence shaking the plane violently. The lightning continued to flash all around us, and the thunder was deafening. It was a test of endurance and skill, and I knew that our only chance of survival was to stay calm and focused. John, there, I see a break in the clouds, Mark shouted, pointing to the right. I followed his gaze and saw a small patch of clear sky in the distance. It was our only hope. Hang on, Mark. We're going for it, I said, steering the plane towards the break in the clouds. The turbulence was intense as we flew towards the clear sky, the storm seeming to fight us every step of the way. But I was determined to get us out of there. I gripped the controls tightly, my eyes fixed on the patch of clear sky ahead. Come on, I muttered under my breath, willing the plane to break free of the storm. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we burst through the clouds and into the clear sky. The turbulence ceased, and the lightning and thunder were left behind. We were free. We made it, Mark. We're out of the storm, I said, my voice filled with relief. Thank God, Mark replied, his voice equally relieved. We flew on in silence for a while, both of us still shaken by the experience. The sky was clear once again, and the ocean below us was calm. It was as if the storm had never happened. John, what the hell was that? Mark asked, his voice filled with bewilderment. I don't know, Mark. I've never seen anything like it. But we're safe now. That's all that matters, I replied, though I knew that the experience would haunt me for a long time. We continued our flight, the sense of unease still lingering in the back of my mind. The Bermuda Triangle had always been a place of mystery and legend, but now I had experienced its power firsthand, and I knew that I would never forget it. For a few minutes that felt like hours, we completely lost communication with the control tower. It was as if we were isolated from the outside world. The turbulence was intense, and I struggled to keep control of the plane. Suddenly, there was a blinding flash of light, and, in the blink of an eye, the storm vanished. We were flying in a clear sky again, but something was wrong. The instruments in the cockpit were going haywire, displaying readings that made no sense. The altimeter showed we were at 10,000 feet, but the horizon outside suggested we were much higher. The GPS system was unable to lock onto any satellites, leaving us without a clear position. I glanced at my co-pilot, whose face mirrored my own confusion and concern. "Do you have any idea what's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He shook his head. "No clue. It's like we're in a different world." I tried to contact the control tower again, but there was nothing but static. I switched to the emergency frequency, hoping to reach any nearby aircraft or ground station. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Flight 209. We have lost contact with the control tower and are experiencing instrument failure. Does anyone copy?" After a few moments of silence, a voice crackled through the static. "Flight 209, this is air traffic control. We have no record of your flight plan. Can you confirm your current location?" I looked at my co-pilot, who shrugged helplessly. "We don't know our exact location. Our instruments are malfunctioning. We were last in contact with you before entering the storm at coordinates 45 degrees north, 75 degrees west." There was a long pause before the voice responded. "Flight 209, those coordinates are in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Can you provide any additional information?" I felt a chill run down my spine. We had been flying over the continental United States, nowhere near the ocean. I took a deep breath and tried to remain calm. "Control, we were flying over land before the storm hit. Something isn't right. Can you guide us to the nearest airport?" "Stand by, Flight 209. We're attempting to locate you." As we waited, I scanned the horizon for any sign of land or other aircraft. The sky was eerily empty, and the ocean below stretched out endlessly in all directions. My mind raced with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. Had we somehow been transported to another part of the world? Or was this some kind of elaborate hoax? "Flight 209, this is Control. We have identified an airport approximately 200 miles east of your current position. Adjust your heading to 90 degrees and descend to 5,000 feet. We'll monitor your progress." I acknowledged the instructions and began to adjust our course. As we descended, the strange readings on the instruments began to stabilize, though they still didn't match the visual cues outside. My co-pilot and I exchanged worried glances, but we were determined to reach the airport and find out what had happened. The flight continued in silence, each of us lost in our own thoughts. The clear sky and calm ocean were a stark contrast to the chaos we had just experienced. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we spotted the airport on the horizon. It was a small, isolated airstrip, surrounded by dense forest. "Control, we have visual on the airport. Preparing for landing." "Roger, Flight 209. You're cleared to land. Welcome back." As we touched down on the runway, I couldn't shake the feeling that our ordeal was far from over. We had survived the storm and the strange disappearance, but the mystery of what had happened and where we had been still loomed large. As we taxied to a stop on the small, isolated airstrip, the gravity of our situation began to sink in. We had just experienced something extraordinary, something that defied all logic and reason. My co-pilot, Mark, and I exchanged a look of bewilderment and relief. We had made it through the storm and the strange disappearance, but now we faced the daunting task of understanding what had happened. "John, I'm going to start running diagnostics on the instruments," Mark said, his voice steady but edged with tension. "Good idea. Let's see if we can make any sense of this mess," I replied, my mind still reeling from the events. As Mark began his work, I glanced at the clock on the dashboard. My heart skipped a beat. According to the clock, nearly 24 hours had passed since we had taken off from Miami. Yet, by my calculations, we had only been in the air for a few hours. I checked my wristwatch, hoping for a different answer, but it confirmed the same impossible truth. "Mark, check the time on your watch," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. He looked at me quizzically but complied. His eyes widened in shock. "John, this can't be right. It says we've been in the air for almost a whole day." "I know. Something's not adding up. Let's finish these diagnostics and see what else we can find," I replied, trying to focus on the task at hand. We worked in silence, methodically checking each instrument. The altimeter, compass, and GPS were all functioning normally now, but the readings they provided were baffling. According to our GPS, we were hundreds of miles off course, in a location that didn't match any of our previous coordinates. "John, this doesn't make any sense. We were flying over land, and now we're in the middle of the ocean? How is that possible?" Mark asked, his voice tinged with frustration. "I don't know, Mark, but we need to figure it out. Let's review the flight data and see if there are any clues," I said, trying to maintain a semblance of control. We accessed the flight data recorder, hoping it would shed some light on our predicament. As we reviewed the data, it became clear that something extraordinary had happened. The recorder showed a sudden spike in electrical activity just before the instrument started to fail, followed by a period of complete data loss during the storm. When the data resumed, we were hundreds of miles away from our last known position. "This is incredible. It's like we were transported to another location in an instant," Mark said, shaking his head in disbelief. "I've heard stories about time and space anomalies in the Bermuda Triangle, but I never thought they were real." "It looks like we just lived through one," I replied, my mind racing with possibilities. As we continued to analyze the data, a group of airport officials approached the plane. They looked just as confused as we felt. "Captain Smith, I'm Bill Anderson, the airport manager. We've been trying to reach you for hours. Can you tell us what happened?" one of them asked, his expression a mix of concern and curiosity. "We encountered a severe storm, and our instruments failed. We lost contact with the control tower, and were flying blind for a while. When we finally regained control, we were hundreds of miles off course," I explained, trying to summarize the inexplicable events. "And the time discrepancy? How do you explain that?" Anderson pressed. "We're still trying to figure that out. According to our instruments, we've lost nearly 24 hours, but we only flew for a few hours. It's as if time itself was affected," I said, my voice trailing off as I struggled to find the right words. Anderson nodded, taking in the information. "We've heard stories about strange occurrences in the Bermuda Triangle, but this is unprecedented. We'll need to conduct a thorough investigation." "Of course. We're willing to cooperate fully," I replied, relieved that someone was taking our story seriously. As the officials began their inspection of the plane, Mark and I continued our analysis. The more we delved into the data, the more questions arose. How had we been transported such a vast distance in an instant? What had caused the electrical spike? And most importantly, how had we lost an entire day? "John, do you think we'll ever get answers to these questions?" Mark asked, his voice filled with a mix of wonder and apprehension. "I don't know, Mark, but I do know that something extraordinary happened to us. We need to keep digging and see what we can uncover," I replied, determined to get to the bottom of the mystery. As the day wore on, we were joined by a team of investigators from various fields, aviation experts, meteorologists, and even a few scientists specializing in electromagnetic phenomena. Each of them brought their own expertise to the table, but none could offer a definitive explanation for what had happened. "This is one of the most perplexing cases I've ever encountered," said Dr. Emily Carter, a renowned physicist. "The data suggests some kind of temporal and spatial anomaly, but we need more information to draw any conclusions. We'll do everything we can to assist you, Dr. Carter," I said, grateful for her expertise. Over the next few days, we worked tirelessly with the investigators, piecing together the fragments of our experience. We reviewed the flight data, analyzed weather patterns, and even conducted interviews with other pilots who had flown through the Bermuda Triangle. Each piece of information brought us closer to understanding the phenomenon, but the puzzle was far from complete. "John, this is going to take time. We may never fully understand what happened, but we can't give up," Mark said, his determination mirroring my own. "You're right, Mark. We owe it to ourselves and to the aviation community to find answers. We'll keep pushing forward," I replied, resolute in our quest for the truth. As the investigation continued, I couldn't help but reflect on the extraordinary events we had experienced. The Bermuda Triangle had always been a place of mystery and legend, but now I had first-hand knowledge of its power. The discovery of our displacement and the lost time was a stark reminder that there are forces in this world that we have yet to understand. In the end, the mystery of our flight through the Bermuda Triangle remained unsolved. But the experience had changed me forever. It had opened my eyes to the wonders and dangers of the world, and it had ignited a burning desire to seek out the truth, no matter how elusive it might be. We managed to re-establish contact with the control tower, and after a smooth flight, we landed in San Juan. We were greeted by a team of investigators who wanted to understand what had happened. They informed us that our plane had disappeared from the radar for almost 24 hours, and no one could explain how we had reappeared so far off our original course. The investigators were a mix of aviation experts, meteorologists, and even a few representatives from the military. They seemed perplexed and eager to get to the bottom of the mystery. We were taken to a debriefing room where we recounted our experience in detail, from the moment we lost contact to our sudden reappearance. The lead investigator, a stern-looking man with a graying beard, asked us a series of probing questions. He wanted to know if we had encountered any unusual weather phenomena, if any of our instruments had malfunctioned, or if we had seen anything out of the ordinary. We described the strange turbulence, the sudden darkness, and the eerie silence that had enveloped the plane. We also mentioned the inexplicable calm that followed and the bizarre cloud formations we had witnessed. The investigators took notes and exchanged glances, clearly puzzled by our account. They informed us that there had been no reports of severe weather in the area at the time of our disappearance. Furthermore, the radar data showed that our plane had vanished without a trace, only to reappear in a completely different location nearly a day later. As we continued to answer their questions, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something they weren't telling us. The military presence, in particular, seemed unusual for a routine aviation investigation. I wondered if there was more to this incident than we knew. After hours of questioning, we were finally released and allowed to go home. The investigators assured us that they would continue to look into the matter and promised to keep us informed of any developments. As we left the airport, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. What had really happened to us out there? And why couldn't anyone explain it? In the days that followed, we tried to return to our normal lives, but the experience had left its mark on all of us. We kept in touch, sharing any new information we came across and speculating about what might have caused our mysterious disappearance. Some of us even began to research similar incidents, hoping to find clues that might shed light on our ordeal. Despite our efforts, the mystery remained unsolved. The official investigation eventually concluded that our disappearance was due to an unexplained atmospheric anomaly, but that explanation did little to satisfy our curiosity. We knew there was more to the story, but without concrete evidence, we could only speculate. As time passed, the incident gradually faded from public memory. But for those of us who had lived through it, the questions lingered. What had we encountered in that strange, dark sky? And would we ever truly understand what had happened to us during those lost hours? In the weeks that followed, I was subjected to numerous interviews and tests. Experts in aviation, meteorology, and even scientists from various fields tried to unravel the mystery. Some suggested that we had entered a time portal, while others believed in unknown electromagnetic phenomena. The truth is, no one could come to a definitive conclusion. The aviation experts meticulously examined the aircraft, looking for any signs of mechanical failure or anomalies. They scrutinized the flight logs, the black box recordings, and even the maintenance history, but everything seemed normal. There were no indications of a malfunction or any irregularities that could explain the strange events. Meteorologists analyzed weather data from the day of the incident. They considered the possibility of rare atmospheric conditions or unusual weather patterns that might have caused the disturbance. However, the weather reports showed nothing out of the ordinary. It was a clear day with stable atmospheric conditions, which only added to the perplexity. Scientists from various disciplines were brought in to provide their insights. Physicists speculated about the potential involvement of exotic particles or quantum anomalies. Some even entertained the idea of parallel universes or alternate dimensions intersecting with our own. Despite their advanced theories, they lacked concrete evidence to support any of these claims. Psychologists and neurologists also got involved, exploring the possibility of mass hallucinations or collective psychological phenomena. They conducted extensive interviews with the crew and passengers, searching for commonalities in our experiences. While there were some minor variations in individual accounts, the core events described were remarkably consistent, ruling out the likelihood of a shared delusion. The media caught wind of the story, and soon it became a sensation. Conspiracy theorists had a field day, proposing all sorts of wild explanations, from government cover-ups to extraterrestrial interventions. The public was captivated, but the sensationalism only served to muddy the waters further. As the investigations dragged on, I found myself growing more frustrated. The lack of answers was disheartening, and the constant questioning took its toll. I wanted to move on, to put the incident behind me, but the mystery lingered like a shadow. Despite the exhaustive efforts of so many brilliant minds, the enigma remained unsolved. The official reports were inconclusive, filled with technical jargon and speculative theories, but devoid of any definitive answers. It was as if we had stepped into a realm beyond the grasp of modern science, a place where the usual rules did not apply. In the end, the incident was classified as an unexplained anomaly. The authorities closed the case, but for those of us who experienced it firsthand, the questions persisted. What had really happened that day? Were we part of some grand cosmic event? Or was it a mere glitch in the fabric of reality? As time passed, the world moved on, and the incident faded from public memory. Yet, for me and the others involved, it remained a defining moment, a reminder of the mysteries that still lie beyond our understanding. We returned to our lives, forever marked by the experience, and with a newfound sense of humility in the face of the unknown.